In this video, I'm going to show you two things. The first is how to make an accurate large grid for your enlargement of your pattern piece. And then at the 3-minute mark, I'm going to show you how you can use the small grid with the large grid to actually enlarge the pattern piece. So my paper has a little bit of a curl to it, so I'm taping it down to the work surface. And what I'm going to try to do is work off of the straight edge of the paper, and I'm going to just take my ruler, and my grid needs to be 3.5 by 3.5 square. So I'm going to go ahead and mark 3.5 all the way down this ruler. I'm eyeballing it to make sure that it looks 90 degrees square to the edge of the paper. If you have a triangle, that would also help you to make sure that you're getting a nice parallel line to that edge. But if you draw enough little notches or little marks at 3.5, and then put your ruler vertical and basically find the average of all those 3.5-inch marks, or whatever your distance is, you should be pretty accurate in getting a nice parallel line to the edge of your, the straight edge of your paper. Once I have that line established, I'm going to line up my ruler and make sure that the ruler is again at the 3.5-inch point, and then I can draw my 7-inch line, my 10.5-inch line, and I can just keep going from there, adding little marks at 3.5 inches from that line. So I'll just keep going down. I've done 3 lines, and again I'm just going to sort of find the average of those 3 lines for those vertical spaces. And then I'll go ahead and place the horizontal lines. Now again, if you have a triangle or something square, that would be really useful to help make sure that you're maintaining a square. In a pinch, you could use a sheet of printer paper, which is usually fairly square. I usually weight it down or tape it just to make sure it doesn't move while I line up the ruler, but that is one way. But I also could just make sure that when I line up the ruler, that those vertical lines are all lining up with one another, meaning it's hitting it at the 3.5-inch mark, the 7-inch mark, the 10.5-inch mark, the 14-inch mark, etc. And then that way, those lines that I'm drawing, those horizontal lines, should stay square to the rest of the vertical lines. I like to transfer numbers or letters to the side of the grid, and that will help me just keep my bearings when I'm using the grid to enlarge my pattern. So I've got to transfer this curve and that upper portion to my grid, and I'm going to basically look square by square by square by square, identifying that individual shape within each square and then transferring it into the larger square. Now, I usually visually just draw marks at the halfway point to break the square into quarters. And then what I can do is I can say, is the line that I need to draw at the halfway point of that square, is it less than half? Is it more than half? And those are guides that can kind of help me get a more accurate line and a more accurate representation. So again, at this point, I think it's going to be useful if I come away with another little 1/2 inch, or divide the square in half. Now I'm eyeballing it, but you also could use a ruler to make sure that you're dividing the 3.5-inch square in half. But I usually want to move a little bit quicker. You of course could also use a smaller grid to start out with. So this is a 1-inch grid that I'm using, but if you used a 1/2-inch grid, you would have smaller squares, and you wouldn't have as much sort of guessing room. But that also means that on your larger grid, you have more to draw for vertical lines and horizontal lines. So what I've discovered here is that there is a straight edge of that pattern piece, and if I can, I might as well use my ruler to draw that straight edge. So I'm just continuing to move my way around the form, looking at the halfway point, connecting the dots. I draw a line on the vertical and on the horizontal, and then connect those. Again, there's a little straight edge there between the A and the B, and so I've just used my ruler. And I've got a subtle little curve right here. So I'm just going to add that in. I did transfer my notches onto the pattern piece as well, from the small pattern piece to the large pattern piece, which can be useful. So now you have an enlarged version of the pattern piece that you were transferring.